A holiday reflection. As we stand at the threshold of a new year, there's almost a magnitude pull to fix ourselves, to set resolutions, purchase that wellness course, or finally become the person we think we should be. But what if the very act of constantly trying to improve ourselves is what's keeping us from feeling whole? This conversation couldn't be more timely as we navigate the pressure cooker of New Year transformation culture. Hello, and welcome to Wellness Reimagined. I'm your host, Anya. And you know that feeling when you've read the books, done the workshops, journaled until your hand cramped, meditated, manifested, and optimized, and yet something feels off? Like you're running on a treadmill of self improvement that never actually gets you anywhere. Yeah, me too. So today we are having a conversation that might make some people uncomfortable. And honestly, that's exactly why we need to have it. We are talking about what happens when the very thing that's supposed to heal us, the wellness industry, the self help culture, the constant pursuit of being better, becomes part of the problem itself. My guest today is Dr. Christiaan Oranje, an international transformation speaker, mentor, and author of The Elvis Syndrome. He was recently named Spiritual Wellness Leader of the Year 20 in 2025. And he works primarily with successful women who, despite achieving everything they thought they wanted, still can't shake the feeling that something's missing. So, whether you're someone who spent thousands on personal development or someone who's skeptical of the whole thing, I think this conversation is going to challenge some assumptions. So, let's get into it. Christian, welcome to Wellness Reimagined.
Thank you, Anya, and it is a real pleasure and a true honor to be here with you and to serve your audience.
Mhm. So, Christian, let's start here. I want to be direct about this. You work with affluent, successful women who, on paper, have it all. They've done the work, they've achieved their goals, and yet they still feel unfulfilled. Some people might hear that and think, well, that's a pretty privileged problem to have. What do you say to that? And more importantly, what does the struggle tell us about the limits of conventional wellness and self help?
Yes, that's actually very well put. What does it tells us? Because I like to use the work that I do with affluent self-seeking women over 40 as an illustration to point out certain principles, how to resolve or change something in their condition that can be basically applied to everyone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
So, what would you say is the thing you would like to know more about the most?
Mm-hmm. You talk about something called soul connection in your work, and you frame it as central to real well being. But here's where I want to push back a bit. That language, soul connection, higher self, fiery transition, for a lot of people that sounds abstract, maybe even inaccessible. It can feel like spiritual bypassing, like we are being told our real world problems aren't actually real problems. How do you distinguish between genuine spiritual work and what's essentially just another form of escapism?
It is actually in the word escapism. When there is such a thing going on like escapism, then that is a sign that real application of spirituality and for what purpose spirituality is designed is in a way missed. I like to say that spirituality only makes sense when it is practically applied and we practice it and use it to improve our daily lives and our work and how we feel about what we do or not. And that's actually in this word incarnation. Incarnation to me, and it actually literally means to bring that what is invisible and not tangible, to bring that, let's call that spirituality, into our flesh. into our human existence. Now, the interesting thing about this is there has been a French Jesuit who lived in New York, um, Pierre Gardin, something like that. The name is not quite on top of my head, but the expression he used is, he said, pointed out, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And that in itself captures that what I've just pointed out.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's amazing.
So when we talk about soul connection, I am very familiar with the idea many people may have that it is something far out and not actually valuable, not making any sense in how we live our daily lives. But the opposite I found is actually true. It has helped me in my life to overcome the deepest issues that I've struggled with. It's that which made all the difference. Mm.
Mm-hmm. 100%. And so when someone comes to you feeling stuck or unhappy, what are you actually helping them reconnect with? Is it something they've lost or something they never knew they had in the first place?
Well, never knew. I'm not sure about that because my sense of it is that all of us here listening to the podcast at one point in time did had that awareness. And the reason I'm saying this is when we talk about soul connection, the soul connection is something that may seem to be lost. We may seem to have that no connection because we do not experience it as such. But I believe I'm the one of those who believe that the soul connection is always present. It has been present from the beginning of time, all the way through our existence. It is existence here right now. Again, even though we might not feel it that consciously, and it will be there with us until the end of time and beyond. So the thing is that the perception of not having such a connection, even to the point that there are people who insist to deny that we have such a part in us, our soul, is an illusion. What happened is that at some point in time, something has happened with which either made us feel disconnected from our soul, or we have made a decision to disconnect ourselves from it. And the what is needed to restore that kind of connection with our soul is to reestablish, because again, the connection is still there. So we need to reestablish that more direct and conscious connection with it in order to really feel supported by it and really feel as an addition to our human life, and therefore feel enriched and empowered and supported by that particular part of us. Because to be very clear, when we talk about our soul, what we are actually talking about, and by the way, it is more complex than what I'm presenting it now, but because of the sake of conversation, let's keep it simple and let's call it soul. The soul, what we're talking about actually is our essence, is our true self, is our true nature.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I appreciate that clarification because I think there's real danger in the wellness space right now where everything gets labeled as energy or vibration without any grounding in lived experience. And what I'm hearing from you is that this isn't about transcending our problems or pretending they don't exist. It's about changing our relationship to them. Though I'll be honest, I think some listeners might be wondering how is that different from just therapy or good old fashioned self reflection.
Well, let me say first of all, because you mentioned something very important, and that is that actually what it comes down to is to, and it might sound strange, but to make use of that what is actually bothering us in the sense of look at an oyster. At some point, life blew a worthless grain of sand in its belly. But then the oyster found a way to treat it and to deal with it in such a way that eventually a very beautiful and precious pearl came out of it. And that is very much how I like to see and approach the issues, the problems, the challenges, the difficulties that we encounter at certain times in our life. I think that, what comes up is there are a few things that are characteristic to the particular approach that I've come up with. And just to be clear, this approach stems from lived experience in which I battled with a lot of emptiness, feeling unfulfilled while I was successful. I was financially free. I had what looked for others had my dream life, but I needed to go to 4 therapy sessions each week to cope with my sense of feeling deeply unhappy. And taking myself as my own laboratory and stepping into it every day to explore and to go on that quest to find answers. Why? How come that even the people who have it all can still feel these kind of similar feelings of feeling empty and unfulfilled and unhappy? And I have come to the point that indeed what you already mentioned in your introduction, where had done everything that I could find that was on the market. I did it all. I worked very, very hard and did my best. And then, to my utter frustration and disappointment, at some point, I just had to admit that on a deeper level, something had not really been touched, and all the work didn't seem to make any difference. And uh, I had not the feeling that even I myself was able to reach those deeper layers, or that particular part very deep inside of me. And due to that journey of finding the answers, but not only the finding the answers, but really to come through finding the answers to the resolution of what was burdening me, I came to the conclusion that it is, and that is the kind of what you could say the first tip, what we already talked about, that it is in in re-establishing a more direct and conscious connection with our soul, and adding that specific element to the process is what you might see as the difference between traditional therapy. Um, the soul in us is what you can. Let me say it like this, because that makes it more um, practical. Let's link it to the mind and the brain. In And I don't want to hook it on therapy per se. It's more like that what I see is that the traditional methods that are out there, which have served us very well for a very, very long time, more and more are not able to produce the results that we're looking after or looking for, because the world has changed. We have changed. And therefore, in the world of today, we the situations and circumstances and the kind of types of people that we meet, including the physical conditions that we start to experience, need upgraded and more refined kind of approaches. And my take on it is that such an approach as I am describing, to include that element of soul in it, is giving that sense of is giving that element of the upgrade, and matches the circumstances and situations that we are now encountering. Now, there's in the traditional methods, there's very much emphasis on the mind and how our brain is working. When you look on YouTube and you search for clips on the subconscious and how to, then you will find, and uh, you know it even because the people listening here to the call, I can imagine that they have experienced themselves that working on the subconscious and doing all the work to reprogram the subconscious and so on and so forth is not doing the work and not giving the results anymore as it used to be. And it has to do with the shift in perception and the shift in approach in seeing that the mind and the brain are not actually the thing that need to be worked on, because let's, for the sake of conversation, let's see it as merely a vehicle. What matters is, and that is the shift in perception, which driver you choose and allow to sit behind the steering wheel, which part of you is operating your mind, is operating your brain. And what I'm particularly referring to are, when I speak about parts of yourself, the three types of self. The three types of self, I distinguish the animal self, which is instinctual, impulsive, reactive. It is the human self. It is the self in the human form of you and of all the listeners I'm now talking to. And there is this aspect of the higher self or angelic self. Now, when I present these three different selves, then it becomes obvious right away that, for instance, when you put your lower self behind the steering wheel of your mind or brain, like it's going forward, go left, turn around, stop, it it is reactive, it is impulsive, and then you can already imagine what kind of ride that's going to be. When, for instance, you put your human self in the driver's seat of your mind and brain, then things could happen like, well, I'm not quite sure if I'm going to drive because it might rain, or, well, and if I go, where do I go? And if that's really what I want, and is there not a kind of other way of using the right for, and a kind of, but at the end of the day, you might end up noticing that you have been contemplating how to drive and you have actually not moved at all. The higher self, on the other hand, is that part of you that is offering you the guidance to say, you know what, let's drive, and I will take care of where we are going. You don't have to worry, just drive. And here on the next turn, you go left, then at the traffic light, you keep going straight on. Then you see the bridge, cross the bridge. After the bridge is the third street on your right, and then the second house on the left. And that's where you need to go. So if you imagine those three types of rides you take your mind or brain on, you can see that immediately that there is a very, very, very different outcome, a very different sort of journey, and a very different outcome that you get out of it. So that's the kind of the one tip I would say makes a difference. The other difference, and that is not so much different from the traditional methods at least it doesn't look like, and that is the importance of differentiation, to see yourself, the human self, as being the one who is living this life and who is the operative power. You, the human self, is living this life, making the decisions, deciding where to go, where not, what to do, what to say or not. And that also means that your human self is actually in charge of deciding if you want to include that element of your soul in your human experience or not. Now, let's say that, and actually not so much let's say, but every prospect, every woman who is approaching me to ask for assistance and if I can support her in transforming what is burdening her, it is important to make a distinction, to differentiate that the woman who's coming and the one listening here now to this interview, you are willing and interested, have this desire to change. Why? Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. The thing is that when you feel fearful or anxious or angry or you feel resistance of doing that kind of work, listen to yourself how often you speak in the I form. I don't want to. I feel the resistance. I feel sad. I feel fearful, and so on and so forth. But the thing is, and that's where differentiation comes in and is very important, to see those resistances and the things that are holding you back from what you actually, in the deepest of your heart, would like to accomplish, to see as parts of you. And here there comes the similarity with the traditional methods. They're often used and called your inner child. Now, the difference in my approach is that the inner child is at first not so much the actual parts of us, the younger parts enough, actually the parts of us where we have what we actually have experienced and lived um, early on. We do that as well, but first and foremost, we see our inner child as the guardian that governs all that we have stored within our sub and unconscious. And it's important to take that as a kind of a stand and a shift in perception. Because imagine when you, the human in you, want to make the changes, but your inner child, which is the more universal kind of child I'm now talking to, is unwilling to let it go, it clamps its fists, digs its heels in the sand, then you can already imagine that the changes you want to make, it's actually not going anywhere. And what is needed is to establish a relationship with that inner child to such an extent that it slowly, slowly becomes willing to go along and slowly, slowly start to trust you as the human to make the changes and to believe that everything, even though it is not quite knowing precisely where it is all going, to feel safe to make that journey with you. And the third thing that I would like to emphasize that, and I mentioned it already, and that is the subconscious. I have been working so and so hard again on my subconscious until the point that I noticed again, as I already mentioned, that nothing actually on that deeper level made any difference. And then it opened up my awareness that we are created with a conscious, with a subconscious, as with an unconscious. So, unconscious. And it never crossed my mind. I never felt drawn to take that in consideration. And the moment I did, it was like opening a treasure trunk. Because what I found was that actually in the unconscious, what is stored in there are what I call the root causes, which function and work like core drivers that spark and fuels and activates the habits that make us do or say or not do or say the things that we do and the things that are harmful to ourselves and others and things that we later regret. So with which I mean to say is that particularly in circumstances where we feel trapped and being taken hostage by these kind of habits that we created for ourselves and that once served us, and we feel that we become imprisoned by what have now become unconscious slash habits. What is actually the situation, and particularly when it repeats itself again and again and again, we have to dive deeper, identify the actual root cause of it that causes us to causes the habits to activate. Because if we don't, if we leave the root cause untouched, we can change the habits until we weigh an ounce, so to speak. But then, because it is unchanged, the root cause will pull that particular habit time and time and time again back into its original place, finding ourselves at square one again. So that's basically the work on the unconscious is often very much neglected and not taken in consideration as much as I think it should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's so amazing. So, Dr. Christian, thank you for this conversation. And I think we have poked at some uncomfortable truths today. And I hope that's exactly what people needed to hear.
Mhm. Yeah, I hope so too. Yes. So, for anyone listening who feels that something of what I've shared resonated, I love to offer you a little gift. It's a short downloadable ebook called The 5 Steps to Transform Any Negative Feeling or Thought Anytime, Anywhere in 7 minutes or less. I created it because many years in my own life I carried emotions far longer than needed, simply because no one ever showed me that those thoughts and feelings can be transformed much quicker, even when needed instantly in the moment. The advantage of this little ritual is that it prevents you from suppressing of what you don't like to feel or think, and instead to turn them into thoughts and feelings that energize and empower and uplift you. You'll find the link in the show notes. It's a simple download and you'll receive it by email. In addition, for those of you who have it all, yet still feel unfulfilled, and sense the desire to take a deeper step to free yourself from what is burdening you, for you, I'm also offering a complimentary From Pointless to Purpose treasure map consultation. It's an hour conversation where you can experience how I work, ask questions directly, and explore whether I'm the right person to assist you in making the changes that may set you free. Just to be clear, this is a no pressure consultation. There's no obligation. It's simply an invitation to explore.
Perfect. And to everyone listening, as we head into this new year, I want to leave you with something to sit with. What if you didn't need to become anyone different? What if you didn't need to fix, optimize, or improve yourself? What if the thing you have been searching for was never actually missing? I'm not saying personal growth is invaluable. I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn or evolve or work on our healing. But maybe, just maybe, we have confused growth with worthiness. And maybe the most radical thing you could do right now is nothing at all. Just be, just rest, just trust, just trust that you're already enough. That's all for this episode of Wellness Reimagined. I'm Anya, and I'll see you next time. Take care of yourselves, and remember, you're already whole.